not good.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I've written 4 poems already.
You want it to be recorded?
It's fine. I mean, it's what you've asked me to do. I'm fine with that.
He signs the
It's
waiver.
part of a fanzine already. You know, we probably printed a little magazine. It's out there in the world.
There are people who publish a fanzine about you.
This was all
No,
happening.
we just bought it. Like we made like the 9 participants. We all have a little.
This was
magazine.
all a workshop in Aspen, in a very beautiful place,
Yes.
surrounded by spirituality.
So inspired by
deep in Colorado.
Aspen nature, like,
Stunning.
I collected a bunch of words. I taught a machine some of my grammar, and I had it reproduce these 4 poems. I'll read 2. Weaving the dead grey plastic, the mesh of the raindrops, weaving the water, whirling the weed, licking the artful hand, the stacked cliche between an end beneath this but that, the friction beneath the edge, pitched between pulling into this nor that, the brush around the undergrowth, the moss with the distance, mediated through cloud around the gritty streams, an emerging grain, the harsh experience into the plain, into the things, a good excuse is the stream for the brass weed, curving the bark, surveying the dead edges of the arraigned edges, of the split aquamarine stone, conserved for the needles, the satin with my benches, caressing over the air under the shiny city, willfully, cheerily mine, the ring between the mans.
Beautiful.
Was it a computer or human generated?
Well, no, that was computer generated, or well, I don't know. It's up for debate, I guess.
Was the final was the last edit by you or the machine?
So the
In
only
time.
thing I did is I added capital letters and I added full stops and I changed an A to an and.
So you really didn't curate his. You didn't act as editor
No,
in chief of your program. You just
No.
it had the last
Yeah.
creative.
and I created the
Is
stanzas.
it the
as well.
last laugh?
Yeah, clearly it will. It's got to sit in here. It's probably knocking us and so.
Fantastic.
So there you know, it's brilliant.
But I
Um,
wouldn't have guessed that that's machines. That's
Okay, so I'll do one more. The wood over my limbs, emerged, mired, seduced, decreed, prohibited. The sandpaper of the yellow satin over landscape by the undergrowth, a grass in the flowers, targeting with the growth. A dry thought for the winds between the mass, a moss against my symbols. Sanctified against rim for the clouds, the wood beneath my flowers, tickling the grit, vibrating the good sandwich, surely willfully mine, coveted around edge with suspicion, a cry as the cloud, gripping any smile, as a pine cone into the effigy, a lime reminder. What is the moment, spying its lie, a troubled experience under the hill with water, emerging the poisonous spaces.
It's like straight out of Blade Runner.
Actually, some of it is. Actually,
Isn't it? It's like straight out of Blade Runner. What is it? The limbs, the boot covered limbs.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
It's upset by its digital, its silicon metal exterior, and it
Siliconness.
longs. I can hear yearning for the organic.
Yeah.
Oh, this is in my computer. What would it say?
It's organophile.
It
Yeah.
It is.
Donna
It
Boyce.
is indeed. Yeah, it's longing for its.
So yeah,
So
so
nature.
each of the parts of speech is like a curated list of say between 10 and 40 words that were inspired by some hike that we had.
I'd love to see the first.
Longing
poems
for
you read.
carbon.
Whenever, if you in your zine, did you give your 4 poems?
No,
That's
I'll
part of
probably,
that story, that
if it were to ask me, what I'll do is I'll do a process thing where I'll do
Yeah.
this is like the stuff that it's generated, and then this is the grammar, this is analyzed. Well, no, that's the grammar it analyzes too. This is the stuff it generates.
Yeah.
And then the output, maybe I'll do a program. I'm not sure if that's useful or not.
I mean, you're familiar with Burroughs' cut-up stuff, right? I mean, the
Yeah, no,
idea
this is totally within the vein of that. Like this is an added layer of complexity on a technique that would be very similar. I mean, yeah, we talked a lot, and this was sort of or I was sort of expecting this like about like the surrealists and the cut up
Right.
system, right? Like
Yeah, you could take. I mean, you could take part of that poem. I could imagine the final outcome of the hybrid, cyborg Simon the poet
Mhm.
has some stanzas that are pure AI generated this method, some standards that you do are then inspired by it to draw in different directions, and who knows what happens.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of quite like the output it's giving me now. I mean, I might improve it a little bit to kind of give it sort of slightly wider berth. 2 of my poems now mention sandwiches.
I'm surprised you've gone in a direction.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think
Identify
a lot of, like, I mean, like, I think a lot of terms of phrases are really evocative and interesting. I don't know.
I think you just need to add the human bit. Yeah, I'll just leave it, but I'll just add the human performance. Yeah. So when you declamate, it's important that you raise, your left hand as if you would greet an invisible Caesar, and then with your right hand you hold on to your manuscript, and
But yeah, I don't know. There's definitely things I see back in this, right? Like, I was walking through like this beautiful nature thing, and I was thinking of the artifice of it and all the plastic that was everywhere.
yeah, that's fantastic.
And all the like,
You're an
beautiful green,
eco-conscious robot.
right? Like, and the like I was feeling a little bit self-conscious about the walk, and then I generated some of the stuff, and I thought it was too impersonal, so I added some pronouns, and then it got too personal, so I realized.
Oh,
Like the thing is like the thing I started to realize is that if you have a lot of pronouns and a lot of things about nature, things start to sound very phallic very quickly.
They do.
It seems to me that if you were a visual artist and you took, I don't know, 4 objects, whatever they were, and you smashed them with a hammer and had a machine scatter them over a canvas, it would be roughly analogous to this.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a very good way of putting it. I mean, I totally don't disagree. I think some of the associations are a bit more complex and interesting, but like essentially yes.
But
Right?
you would end up with random,
random bits that are
things
still
that were
attached
very
to each other.
evocative,
Yeah.
and then random things that you would struggle to make sense of.
Yeah.
But one of the things humans are really good at is finding sense where none may exist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very true.
So I mean, you could then select that and literally that last step.
Well, that's why I asked about the
Discard
evolutionary
them.
thing.
Yeah.
Is because then you would actually eventually end up with something that was really,
Well, that's a whole nother technique in computer and AI.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at William Latham's
Yeah.
pictures from that
Yeah,
period,
true.
they're really amazing to look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can I ask you a question? So where everybody else went? Because there was like about 12 of you, yeah? How was the group?
People went in like really various directions. Some did quite comic things. Somebody generated hipster horoscopes, which was quite amusing. That made
hipster.
hipster horoscope that made their star sign and their weed power strain.
Tomorrow you'll be tempted to order a cafe latte with almond soy milk.
It
Please
was
be
more
aware.
like-
Yeah.
It was more like a smash random.
This is
company
processed
with
food
this-
too.
Avocado, yeah.
Try some smashed avocado.
There was also somebody who did like fed all of their writing in it, and then sort of curated the output from that, which was very interesting. I don't know, like the thing is, what you get back when you do stuff like that, if you have a large body of your own work and you feed it in, is kind of like, yeah, you feed it through the blender and you get these snippets that are sometimes like more subtle or more harsh than you would be, and there's no cohesive outcome sense of somebody's like texture.
So would you say that your idea of the computer aided poetry is like in the bounds of the grammar you are looking for juxtapositions that are not statistically like probable, like that are unusual? Is that how you?
Well,
how
I
you
mean,
call
it's an exploration of the space,
computer
right? You're like
aided
given these sets of forms, like what happens in it, and like for like this idea of curation is very common, right? Like lots of, especially like most of them are visual artists, but you know, a lot of them, what they do is they make an algorithm and then they curate the output of the algorithm. They have a generate 100,000 things, maybe have another thing, and then they do generate another 100,000 things, and they curate things, and they're like, okay, this I like, this I like, and then based on some kind of, you know, of their internal logic, they either some kind of cross-processing.
Is it
This is
in-
not
Is
different.
it in like direct opposition to computer-aided email writing, which I hate, by the way. Like when
No,
Gmail is suggesting,
Grammarly.
It sounds
or,
like
yeah.
you know, Gmail suggesting to you what words to write next. And I'm like,
that's predictive text.
yes,
In the
yes, but-
1980s, we used to talk about computer-aided journalism, which involved, you know, seeing databases for patterns that hadn't really been available before that because you didn't have the data and you didn't have it in a form where you could link things. And people got a lot of that was the early days of people getting a lot of news stories out of databases.
Wasn't that very much the story that
I mean, that's data
hit the press
journalism
earlier this
nowadays.
summer?
Yes, but at that time it was called computer-aided journalism.
Well, there's people like just like looking at big statistical data sets and
There was a news story. Our AI is so good at writing fake news.
no,
that
I
you
mean
would
that's
believe.
slightly different. I think what it's more is
For
like
sports news,
you know, you look
you,
you look at like
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stock data or like I don't know, like stock exchange
there are a
data
lot of,
versus
there are a lot
other
of
data and
types. There are a lot of
find
types.
interesting correlations and use those.
There are a lot of types of news stories that are very structured. If you're
No, I think this was more about mimicking seemingly human's text. So
But
this was about this was I will write 5 paragraphs on a subject that you give me and say whatever you want to say, and it will be believably written by a human.
I mean, but that
It's deep faking text is really what we're talking about here.
but that wasn't what I was.
Deep fake
the
text.
original-
I mean, yeah, you were saying like, you know, it's
Well,
like
it was-
finding this rich data and using that.
Well, I think at the time
These
it
were
was more
friendly
things like
uses.
discovering that there were a lot of stories in which X thing happened, as opposed to thinking there was just one. And so I think at the time it was much more discovering that there were trends that people were not really aware of because they didn't link what happened in Kansas City with what happened in Los
I
I
know
mean,
you're
in
both
the- in
describing
the-
potentially benevolent scenarios. I'm more considering
No, I
the benevolent
understand.
one.
I understand. I'm just saying this is what was.
Yeah.
In the Barbican exhibition, AI More Than Human,
Yep.
it's still on actually.
Yeah.
Is it still on?
Yeah, it
I
is.
think until the
Yeah, 4th
end of the
September.
month or something like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. There are a couple of things. About
Oh yeah, I need to see it
But-
before I
but
go
there-
on
but
holiday.
There's this activity where you have to distinguish between generated and human written text, and some of these are articles that are.
Well, something like
easy to mistake them,
something like quarterly financial results
Yeah.
This tend to be, you know, the main.
Very
It's
structured.
they tend to all want to hit the same highlights. But on the other hand, if a human writes them, a human is much more likely to want to read the story because it's you know, a human will inject humor